Before we get into this episode, I just wanted to extend a huge thank you for those of you who came and visited us at ESA. It's always so great to hear from our users, to hear what research everyone is up to, what new things people are investigating. It goes without saying, it is by far the best part of the job, getting to live vicariously through all of the amazing researchers who use our instrumentation. So again, thank you to everyone who came, and please just continue to drive science forward. I look forward to hearing from you all and reading about your incredible work. And with that, let's go ahead and get into the episode, which of course has new intro music. Let me know your thoughts. Would you focus? Be professional. Hello. Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of LI-COR's podcast series, Leaf to Leaf. I'm here with two of the authors of the Hitchhiker's Guide to Leaf Level Gas Exchange. Go ahead and introduce yourself, gentlemen.
Yeah, Richard Vath. Just as I did in the last episode of this podcast, I am still working as a field application scientist here at LI-COR.
And I'm Jason Hupp, and as far as I'm aware, I am still the Director of Science Research and Applications at LI-COR.
The audio is going to be a little bit wonky. I have these two sharing one microphone.
And one of us doesn't want to move very close to the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're equidistant from the microphone.
I don't think we are.
This is good radio, gentlemen. Thank you. Before we get going into this chapter, I wanted to ask you a couple questions that I have that I think will be kind of showcase each of your personalities. These are directed. Do not answer for the other one. Jason, please complete this question. Who lives in a pineapple?
Well, under the sea.
Okay, thank you. Next, Richard.
It's SpongeBob.
I just went over the rules.
Porous and yellow is he.
You do not answer for the other person.
We're sharing a microphone as we share most things in life.
You're making it weird. Why are you making it so weird? Okay, so Richard, where does this movie quote come from? You have one lifeline. I'm not sure about this. Where does nobody put baby?
Die Hard.
In a corner.
That is correct. 50 points for Gryffindor. Now, Jason, there is no crying in what sport?
Basketball?
Oh, I wish. Would you like to use one of your lifelines?
I'll phone a friend.
Okay, phone a friend. Go ahead.
Richard, what sport are you not allowed to cry in?
Aussie rules football.
I'm going to guess that this is actually supposed to be baseball, and it's a league of their own that Seton is referencing. But I haven't actually seen the movie.
You don't need to tell people that you're very cultured, like a fine wine. Okay, Richard. Where did Jason attend college during his undergraduate?
A small private liberal arts institution in North Carolina that has never been named to me.
He hasn't named it either, and it's kind of driving me crazy.
Because it doesn't really exist.
I don't think it
How
exists
have I
either.
not named it?
Nor did it ever exist.
Yeah.
And he fabricated it.
I imagine it was like a Keebler elf. You just lived in a tree type of situation.
I mean, there was a lot of time spent in trees. We did have a large wildlife refuge on campus that was truly lovely. It's called Catawba College, for those that are curious.
This question, Jason, why do you like me better than Rich?
That presumes that I do like you better than Rich.
Listen, I'm just reading the questions.
I see. So I have to come up with a reason to make that true.
You may lie.
Yeah. You know, the dip you made for the potluck today was pretty spectacular.
Thank you.
There was a potluck.
Ooh, awkward. Hey, this is a question for... last one. Did any of you have a nickname growing up or are currently aware of your nickname now?
Not one that I would share on air.
All right, well, if you don't want to participate, that's fine.
This guy likes to go by J Money, just to be clear.
He does
I don't know if that happened when he was younger.
J Money.
or not.
Well,
he does not like to go by that. It did happen not when I was younger, but when I was much older, a former colleague who who came up with that nickname. Not
What-
my favorite nickname.
That's what your name is in my phone. It's J Money,
I see.
but it's just the $sign.
On our, the tumblers they give us at LI-COR when we start that have our name on them, mine actually says Captain Redbeard. It's on my desk.
I have 2 tumblers, one of which has my name on it. I just lost it recently on a flight, which made me very sad. And
Well,
I have
they'll know it's
another
yours.
tumbler that says Hingle McCringleberry on it, and I was very thankful that HR didn't ask any questions when asked if I would print that on it.
Okay, well, now that we've loosened up a little bit, that
That
concludes episode 3. Thank
was
you for
quality
joining us.
podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll see how much of that actually makes it in there.
All of it.
1%.
This is an unedited sample. So. Oh, I thought you were
Sorry.
Gonna, I thought you were gonna yawn. I was
No,
like,
it's this cough. It's not leaving me.
perfect. That's
It's
Good.
COVID, and he brought it to the studio.
yeah. You were gonna infect our
I'm
microphone.
in the post-COVID, long COVID stage now, if it really is what that is.
Well, I'm glad we're in a confined space. This episode 3 is all about seeking stability. Okay, and so I am personally very excited to hear both of your thoughts on this. I do think it's a little ironic that the 3 of us are here to discuss seeking any sort of stability. I think we're a fairly unstable bunch of people. I'm looking at you, Captain Redbeard. But I think what everyone is has or will be wondering if they haven't done a lot of gas exchanges, this huge question that I think we've all been asked a million times, and that is, when do I actually record the measurement? So in one sentence, go ahead and answer that question.
When you're ready to.
That was incredibly deep.
Wasn't it?
So if you were to go beyond one sentence,
This wisdom has guided generations of graduate students to make good measurements. Just that right there.
oh, the wise one.
It's one of those answers that's 100% true, but completely unhelpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similar to it depends.
Yeah.
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 Rich, what are your thoughts on that? Give a real answer for the people.
Well, it depends. That is the real answer. But it depends on multiple components of what you're interested in being stable, right? Because there's an instrument part of this question, and there's a biology part of this question.
Sure.
Your
So
own biology plays into it as well, but in the chapter, we're mostly focusing on the instrument and the plant, especially the instrument.
Quite true. I mean, I think the question is, what is stable? I mean, that's the main thing that we try to answer, is how to define that. I think we typically assume stable means constant, but we deal with a system that has intrinsic variability in it due to changes in biology, due to performance of the instrument, noise on the instrument. And so when you're looking for stability, you're trying to figure out what sort of there's some bounds that the signal, the thing that you're trying to measure, that's going to exist within. You're really looking like, is the signal changing over time, even though it's kind of noisy and moving around? I think that's what Seaton's trying to get us to
yeah,
say.
and maybe it was not maybe it was an incredibly broad question. So maybe if I could just ask some more pointed ones, like how do we get there? What do we need to know to make that decision? What informs that decision? Okay, you touched on this a little bit, and does it all really depend?
Making a long pause. Are we good to go, even though there's a nice deep bass line in the background?
Can't hear it.
Okay.
I mean, I'm barely picking you guys up.
Oh, good.
I'll be able to bring it out, but do try to get a little bit closer, just for the sake of. Okay, can you lean in and say Hingle McCringleberry, please?
Oh, I forgot what the
What was the
question was.
Right. So
It's definitely a Jason answer.
how do we get there? How do we know? Like, what do we need to know to make that decision? And does it all depend?
Yeah, well, okay. So this conversation's obviously framed around the chapter 4 of the Hitchhiker's Guide that we've been talking about releasing with this. And that chapter is sort of broken up into 3 sections. The first of which is like, can we define a descriptive framework for like what stability is? And so, what is stability, right? Like,
You seem unstable. Are you okay?
I do feel like I had
Let's
one of those
seek it.
mental moments where it just like stops mid thought and
Perfect.
resets. I think it's because the air conditioner turned on. I'm easily distracted. Because, as Seaton pointed out, I'm not very stable, at least in my thought processes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so
It's more than
what
that.
is stability, right? Like, I think what most of us mean when we say something is stable is like the mean is constant over time, right? Like it's not changing. Um, and that's easy to say, but it's kind of harder to define on the fly when you're looking at data coming off of a gas exchange instrument, right? Most people, when they go to make a measurement the first time, they're going to clamp on a leaf. Well, not even the first time. Like every time we go to make a measurement, you're going to clamp on a leaf and you're going to watch some data on a strip chart and you're going to decide, is that data flat? Is it changing? And, that's fundamentally what we're trying to define here is what that looks like. But, in practice, when you're sitting there looking at it, right, like you can blow up the y-axis and it can be really big relative to the signal that you're looking at, and tiny changes might be hidden or big changes might be hidden. You might not see any noise on it. You might zoom way in and noise is like the full width of your axes and you can't tell anything that's going on. So how do we get to some sort of more formal definition that's less subjective? And the first step in getting to that is really understanding sort of all of the things that culminate together to drive what you're seeing. And so, a gas exchange system has sort of two fundamental things that it does, right? It measures something. And in measuring something, we have to be able to control something. So it has a measurement function and a control function,
Sure.
right? And, a measurement's pretty straightforward, right? Like there is some process that we're interested in, let's say carbon assimilation. We make some measurements, we get some signal that comes out of that. We'll call that the CO2 flux, right? The control function, right? We want to control some environmental parameter. It could be temperature of some component in the system that has to be temperature stabilized. It could be something like CO2 that matters to the leaf that affects the biology. And we could control things in sort of two different ways. We talk about open loop controls. It's like, is it on? Is it off? We talk about closed loop controls in the chapter, where we've got something like, say, CO2 control, where we're measuring a CO2 concentration. We're using that as a signal to feed back into the control algorithm. Well, the measurement part has some intrinsic noise to it, right? We talk a little bit about this in the previous chapters. The control part adds a completely different kind of noise component to it, right? Because the controls aren't instantaneous for most things. Like there's some lag between when you measure your control signal and it feeds back into the control algorithm to get to whatever the output is, and that lag adds a delay that comes through as sort of low frequency noise.
I'm really American and I kind of refuse to wait. What can we do about the lag?
Uh, what can you do about the lag?
Why does there have to be a lag?
I feel like we did a good job, and there's still a lag in controls. Some controls don't have much lag. Like the light control is basically lag free, right? Like you've got an LED that you can control at very high speed and with a high resolution controller, and that's the control signal for that is like typically a light sensor that's facing the LED, and that controls really quick. You change light levels on a 6800, like it's instantaneous.
Sure, yeah.
Water vapor is an awful control
Why is that?
because water is sticky. It sticks to things. If you want to change water vapor, you got to wait for absorption, desorption, and things to stabilize, and that transition feeds into the control, and so it's just an intrinsically slow control. That's assuming if you're controlling on something like H2O mole fraction. If you're doing something like relative humidity control, which has a dependence on temperature, then changes in temperature impact the control of water vapor, and like you get sort of two lags that feed into things.
This is why you shouldn't listen to episode 2, because I don't want you to hear a description of our book from just my perspective, for fear that you'll be like, oh, that was not how I would have said it, and it's kind of wrong.
Oh, I can't wait to hear episode 2 now. It's going to be great. We can talk about it in the car on Monday.
Have you listened to episode 1?
I what's the right answer here?
So anyway,
Whatever's in your
let's
heart.
let's get back to this chapter, to
It's not a leading
episode
question.
3 here. So yeah, different sensors, different controls have different lag times, and do they inherently have different amounts of noise? Right, we kind of touched on that.
Yeah, they do. And you can talk about all this in kind of a hand-wavy manner, but I think one of the cool things that we actually do in the text is we start to apply some theory from different disciplines, right? That like leaf level gas exchange people don't just think about normally. And we demonstrate using a Fourier transformation to decompose. Well, we start with an artificial signal that's composed of like white noise, just pure random noise, and a bunch of these sort of periodic noise-like signals that you get from the environmental controls. And we show how to decompose the signal into the period and the magnitude of these various noise components. And then later in the chapter, we actually apply that analysis to real data to figure out what like an appropriate window is to look at to determine stability.
Riveting.
I think so.
I
I
just
thought
asked
it
you
was
to-
pretty novel.
Well, I asked you basically to describe a bunch of figures.
I mean, it's novel for leaf level people. Like lots of other people do this all the time.
But leaf level people don't do this at all. So it's a beautiful thing, because when we teach this stuff at, say, a workshop or a training, we don't go into Fourier transformations, because that would be
true.
silly.
It's a lot.
But the things that we teach when we talk about stability and like periodicity of different components, like I say the word periodicity during a workshop, and like half the people are like, ooh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But what we're describing here in a fairly accessible way that underlies all of that discussion. So if you have a good grasp of what we discussed in this chapter, all of a sudden stability criteria are going to make like infinitely more sense and be very easy to implement, and you won't be afraid of them, which is mostly what I tried to do during workshops, is convince people like, don't be afraid of stability criteria because they're useful and this is why. But I don't ever talk about Fourier transformations.
So I wrote the original draft of this chapter, and I will say that it took longer for me to come up with what's in here and put it together than any other chapter in the entirety of the text. We'll let Richard weigh in on this in a second and see if he says the same thing, but it feels like I can point on a screen and tell you what stability looks like really easily, and we can make some hand-wavy descriptions of it. And I often liken it to sort of like, it's like reading tea leaves, right? There's some pattern there that you're trying to pull out, but the only way to see it is to have an infinite amount of experience looking at it, which is not useful for new users.
Yes. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Are you a tea leaf reader as well?
But I've spent a lot of time making measurements with these instruments, so probably. So then the challenge for us is, how do we succinctly explain that to other people so that they don't have to learn to read tea leaves over? Like eventually they will learn, and it'll be fine. But how do you get somebody up and quickly running and making good measurements?
Right. Right.
It's trying to explain
Tell them to read this
intuition.
chapter.
Trying to explain intuition to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so kind of from here, I also want to say that there's some great drawings again in here. Some of the funnier cartoons are kind of in this chapter.
We do introduce a superhero in this
Yeah.
chapter. It's based on a real person.
Who is it? Can you tell us?
Well, I think anybody that's interactive with our support team will recognize that Plant Person is really one of the people on our support team.
Fair. Very fair. But from here, you kind of go into this, you start really stressing the importance of steady state from the instrument perspective, but also we lead into the biological aspect of what we do here. So, what does that really mean? We touched on the instrument side, but how does someone even start to tackle the biological side?
Well, I think this part's really cool. You know, in chapter 2 of the book, we introduce this dynamic mass balance for solving the steady state, or solving the mass balance or for the flux in an open flow through gas exchange system from Wells and Satoff. And we come back to the dynamic mass balance in this chapter and demonstrate how to use it as a tool to separate when the instrument is not at steady state from when it's just the biology that's not at steady state. It's really easy to say, oh, I'm going to record a data point right now when, my assimilation rate is perfectly constant. But there's a lot of like cool biology that happens as you change the environment around the leaf. Like you give it a step change in light, or you give it a step change in CO2 concentration, and you want to understand like the kinetics of that change from a biological perspective. As soon as you give that step change, there's going to be some period where the instrument's trying to catch up and come back to steady state. And then there's going to be some period where the biology is trying to catch up and come back to steady state. And those periods are very different. And if we just take the like simple model of I can record data when I see a constant value, then I'm either not going to record data during those periods, or if I just record everything, I'm going to have some chunk of that data that represents instrument artifact. And using the difference between the steady state and the dynamic mass balance becomes a really cool tool to say, hey, when these two things converge, I know that my instrument and my biology is at steady state. And when these two things are, no, I said that wrong. I did say that wrong. No, did I say that wrong? No, I didn't say it wrong. I said both are at steady state. It means that yes. And when my steady state mass balance is different than my dynamic mass balance, that means that my instrument is not at steady state, but my biology is.
All right, I'll give Richard a chance to explain this a little bit more succinctly.
Yeah, maybe you should cut that part.
Can
We
we
should try
cut
again.
that.
What?
Because I tripped myself up in it. I even reread this morning to make sure that I was doing it correctly. The last figure, that's the one. That's what I mean.
You said if...
That's what I meant. Instrument at steady state biology.
Yeah, but then you finished that with, it means your biology's at steady state, which is not necessarily the case.
Yeah, what I
Unless
was
they're
trying to
both
say
operating
is
on
that when
biology.
there's a difference, we can separate the instrument and biology.
Yeah, well, I think you did that
Yeah.
effectively.
Because what we want to know is we want to be able to measure the biology when it's not at steady state. But we only want to do that when the instrument itself is at steady state, right? We don't want instrument artifact.
Well, as I go back to, if we well characterize our instrument's dynamics in the absence of leaf, then we can solve for that even when the instrument isn't in steady state, which allows us to actually make a dynamic measurement of what the leaf is doing.
Okay, who's right and who's wrong? Or is it yes?
Richard's kind of right.
No,
But-
that's the whole point of it, right? Because otherwise there's no way to evaluate dynamically what the plant is doing if you don't know what the instrument is doing, even if the instrument's at steady state or dynamically. If something else on the instrument is changing and you want to say something about what the plant is happening, you have to know something about the instrument in the absence of leaf. That's what we've designed the instrument to be able to do, so that we can resolve for dynamic situations. So we can run a dynamic CO2 response curve and have the instrument changing constantly, and also be monitoring the change in biology constantly,
Yeah,
and be able to say something meaningful about what the biology is doing.
I see. I was getting hung up on we have to do it with an empty chamber.
It's a dynamic world out there, and we need to capture it, right? Because, like, it's not specifically us. The gas exchangers of the world spent a great many years where they could only reliably look at any physiology in a steady state, unless they were using a closed transient system. But that's a whole other can of worms that we got into previously. But
That's
outside, environmental conditions are changing all the time. And if you want to see response to realistic conditions, which is a thing that we would ideally like to be able to do. That doesn't mean we don't also make steady state measurements at times, right? But if we want to be able to capture that change, we need to be able to dynamically solve for assimilation and transpiration, ideally.
I think that's true. I mean, yeah. I think part of my excitement around the dynamic mass balance versus the steady state mass balance is that test. The difference between those is effectively an empirical test of instrument steady state. This is what I was trying to say earlier and tripping over myself. But when that difference is, when the transient term in the dynamic mass balance goes to zero, the instrument is at steady state. And any transition you see is pure biology, which is super cool because, like, you could give that to a student. You could say, hey, here's a value we're calculating on the instrument. When this goes to zero, log a data point. It doesn't matter if assimilation is transitioning one way or the other. I mean, that implies that you've done something else if you're trying to make a steady state measurement. We'll talk about that in later chapters. But there's no more like guessing on a graph.
Right. Yeah. Trying to catch it midway
Yeah.
through. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever, I've never done that.
I certainly haven't either. I mean,
I read your thesis. There are some discrepancies.
Oh gosh, you read my, you poor man. Ooh, boy, you're brave. So, if the instrument is at stability, like you, please tell me you didn't.
Can you forward it to me?
It's called grass and stuff. in the state of Kansas.
That explains why I haven't read it.
Yeah, it didn't trigger your Google Scholar. So if the instrument is at stability when it reaches this desired dynamic point, what are the environmental conditions like? What are the big things to watch as a 6800 user?
Oh, like the question is like, what would you look at to determine stability?
Yes.
I see. It's that is a loaded question. There's a good argument to be made for, like, if I want to measure carbon assimilation, I should watch all the variables that go into calculating carbon assimilation, right? Like, that is an output from the instrument. It's not a direct measurement. We've talked about that many times, I think, at this point.
But you care about carbon assimilation.
That's exactly it.
Like, let's take a big picture approach here.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And in reality, on any like well-designed instrument, all of the things that go into carbon assimilation that could be contributing noise or instability to it, the environmental controls, not the leaf itself, right? Those are things that the manufacturer, we characterize really well. And like if we're talking about a 6800, there's already built-in stability criteria around all the environmental controls. And so Richard's right. Just look at carbon assimilation because that's what you care about.
Just don't trust the defaults on those stability criteria.
You shouldn't trust defaults for anything.
We did touch on that, I believe, in episode 2. And yeah, we will.
In every chapter here on out, we will.
Not the dear listener will have to listen to us in every chapter, hopefully, for them.
I mean, one or the other, or better guest than the two of us.
You're valuable, Rich.
Where my skills are.
Yep.
Your intellect dwarfs mine. You're an intellectual monster truck. And you just run over people.
You don't see that in cards very often. That'd be a good Hallmark card.
That's great. That's what I'm putting your next birthday card.
Intellectual monster truck.
Happy birthday.
Do you have a
Intellectual
particular
monster
monster truck in mind?
I went to a monster truck rally once when I was 4 years old, I think. I don't remember the names of any of these vehicles, so I mean, Slayer is something that comes to mind, but that's probably not a real thing.
I mean, I remember that as a band.
Particularly, that's definitely a thing. I remember being perturbed by how loud it was, and I had to have like cotton shoved in my ear holes. So that was what really stood out to me about that event.
I'm getting like a green monster truck.
Yeah,
There's definitely a green one.
That's a good color. I've been to one monster truck rally. We took my child, and it was too loud for him, and so we had to leave.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Just like last week, or
It could have been because it was at the county fair, but it was a few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both for coming and
Just like that.
giving your insight.
He's done with us already.
You guys bore me.
Only away like a sleepy Arabidopsis plant.
We're gonna have to cut that. That's...
Cut that.
It sounds so inappropriate.
If you were to don't look at me like that. If you were to pick something from this chapter that we didn't really cover here, that maybe means something specific to you or your experience with the instruments, could you maybe go into that? Rich, you in particular had mentioned that you have a lot of experience with these instruments. For the sake of stability and understanding the steady state versus dynamic, like what are you really hoping a listener now will find really helpful after they are done reading this chapter?
Yeah, I think if the listener has made measurements before and has been in the situation as many new gas exchangers are, where they sort of just wonder what these stability criteria are, maybe they go on and just use the default settings and don't ever change anything because they don't know what it means. I hope that they have attended a training at some point and then learned what these things are, because this chapter specifically, until the very end, doesn't talk about the actual stability criteria. What I hope it does, though, is that it explains some of what that's built upon, the actual engineering. So it's a pretty engineering-heavy chapter, again, in an accessible way, and I hope that it sort of gives the background for like why these criteria exist and what this means and the different components that make up the potentially crazy-looking data that you're seeing when you clamp on a leaf. Feel more confident in the actual things that you're working with, and it's not just mysterious to you anymore.
Sure.
The same could be said about the entire book, but just particularly in the case of stability criteria, I think is nice.
Baby steps. So that is for someone that has had some experience, a little bit of experience.
Ideally. Yeah.
Do you want to pontificate on what a new user, brand new user, they're so excited, they open up their 6800, they're going out to take a measurement, and what's some friendly lab-made advice?
Related to the chapter?
Yeah.
Read chapter 4.
Yeah. Well, you heard it here first. Read chapter 4, please. Thank you again for joining us here today for episode 3. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. While the intro and closing music may be changing, one thing remains consistent. Stay curious, stay kind, and I'll talk to you soon.